They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of all nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Despite some technical difficulties, we are here with you and we are excited about it. And tonight on Rogueways, it is deeply exciting as we encounter someone who once topped the jazz and performing arts cultural arena with a number of Grammy and Juno winning clients, a rich artistic life of her own with writing, singing, dancing, and acting, all sitting in her bag of super skills, but now has switched tracks completely into certified clinical hypnotherapy, specializing in extraterrestrial encounter regression, past life regression, and interlife regression. She is the director and agent with a multidisciplinary ring of passions, the artist with a million trades, and the regression expert who can help you reach back to anywhere at any time. Lesley Mitchell Clarke, welcome to Rogue Ways. It is a pleasure to have you, and how are you doing?
Oh my goodness, I feel exhausted. I feel like some kind of bad juggling act with a lot of plates flying around, something like that. But I am so pleased to be here. And one of the things that I love to do is to talk to wonderful people like yourself, but also to demystify hypnosis or hypnotherapy. It's astonishing that something that is over 6,000 years old is still so shrouded in mystery. So I'm looking forward to talking about whatever you want to get into.
Oh, I'm very excited.
All right.
Yeah, I myself, it's shrouded for me too, even though I've talked to a few people about it, and we'll get into that. But before we jump in, I do want to tell you, beautiful audience, that it is time to build a bright winter once again. Yes, we are building a bright winter and a bright world together with 1 day of brightness. It is back on December 19th, celebrating the winter solstice. We're all going to dive deep. If you've been to the past 1 days of brightness, you know. If you haven't yet been, it is time for you to come to a 1 day of brightness and connect and uplift yourself. It is so good. We've got Phoenix Aurelius this time, Noriana Diesel, his partner and wonderful practitioner, Catherine O'Shea, and myself as your master teachers and practitioners for a full day of upliftment. There are spots still there for you if you want to go deep in your experience. And you can also keep brighter for longer if you want to join in the weekly, monthly meditations. Weekly, monthly doesn't really make sense, but it's a month membership and we do it twice a week for the whole month. So right now, December's about to start. If you want to go to rogueways.org, you can grab the monthly meditations and the 1 day of brightness ticket and do both and make it an extra bright winter and December. I hope to see you all there. And finally, back to you, my friend, with a pointless question of the episode. And I was going to ask you, what is your favorite Christmas decoration or decor?
Oh, wow. Well, I think probably I'm a big fan of anything angelic, kind of. So I guess my Christmas tree has a lot of sort of things like that, sort of blinged, a lot of blinged out, a lot of blinged out angels and things. I also love quirky Christmas decorations. I used to have several strings of lights that were red chilies, instead of bulbs. I have some Star Trek, some classic Star Trek ornaments. What else do I have? I have a little Howdy Doody ornament that's quite valuable. So I like retro kitschy stuff. too. You know, anything but my parents' diluted, like, aluminum tree of the 60s.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything? Well, I have seen them be, reinvigorated,
True.
but oh man, what a it was well, it went with the awful plastic Swedish furniture. So there you go.
Yeah,
So
true. It all fit together somehow. Oh, yes,
strange time, the 60s, strange time.
I'm so excited. Every time the lights start getting up in the trees and the city starts to transform, I'm like, "Yay!" And I start playing Christmas music and, like,
Yeah.
watching the Fire channel on YouTube.
I'm into it, man. I got to tell you, people are really, really engaging in festive holiday stuff this year. I mean, the people on my street have already gone mad, and it's not even December 1st. So I think it was kind of like that with Halloween as well. We had
Yeah.
more trick-or-treaters than with their parents and stuff, but more than I have seen trick-or-treating for a decade or so. So I think we need this joy in our lives. And it sounds like the event that you're putting together for the solstice is going to be absolutely amazing. And I think the solstice is also a very powerful time to do some type of event like that. So the timing couldn't be better. It's going to
Yes.
be great, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, wait, I love it because we get to tap into that solstice energy. And I also think it's this time of year where people feel really dark sometimes, and
Mm,
especially lately. And so I like to do this where we can just intentionally bring it a bit brighter and keep our connection to each other and to ourselves really, pure and high, and stay away from that darkness that can creep in at this time of year.
I
So,
know. That's true. And the darkness can be self-propelling,
yes.
if you know what I mean. And in fact, if we consciously or subconsciously stay in a zone of light as we perceive light, um, it will literally, stimulate endorphin release and all kinds of other good things. So, if the subconscious believes something is true, it will manifest it. So by conceiving, well, the light is real. I'm not saying the light is not real, because it is. It's interdimensional. It's real. But just even the idea of thinking about light can alter your perception, I
Yeah.
believe.
How cool to realize that and be able to use that as a tool, right? It's almost like the
Hmm.
placebo effect put into action.
It is. I mean, my whole thing is based on the placebo effect in a
Wow.
sense,
Yeah.
because what I'm doing is I am, well, I'm really rewiring the brain, although that's not something I'm going to tell someone when they come in, but
They're like, "Wait,
they
what?"
find it disturbing.
Yeah.
But what we really are doing is disrupting negative patterns, and we are creating new neural pathways. Now, it used to be that, the medical idea is the brain is static, it doesn't change. Well, that turns out to be complete poppycock, because what we know from the real-time mapping of the brain is the brain does heal, the brain can heal, we can make new neural pathways. And so that's that's kind of what I'm all about. I'm about helping people to just let their lights shine and be the most fulfilled, happy people that they can, by releasing whatever it is that has stood in their way. You know, and sometimes it's a real physical thing. I work a lot in addiction, I work in PTSD, I work in pediatric hypnosis. And sometimes some of these things that are holding us back can be quite complex, but we do have an incredible power within ourselves to what's the word I would use, transmogrify any kinds of experiences that we have into learning experiences, and we can view them as positive. It's all about choice. This is a universe, I believe, of free choice,
Yeah.
which is why, whenever people, they mull on these terrible questions. Well, if there is a God, why was there, Auschwitz? Why have the native peoples been decimated? I mean, and of course, on this plane, we can't provide an answer like that, but we don't have to. This is the cruel school. This is where this is the third density. This is where we really learn. And I'll tell you, it's primarily the brave souls that are down here. And we're here at a very specific time for a very specific purpose. And I actually believe, and this may sound corny, but I do believe in an actual awakening, an increased awareness. And I think now there have been some shifts in the planet. I would guess that more than half the people on the planet are awakened to the basic things. Let's help our fellow man. This separatism is an illusion. Once we get into ideas of separatism, that is against divine principle. And I'm not speaking in a corny religious way. I just think it's physics.
Yeah.
Once we start building bridges, once we start building rather fences, then they begin to affect our thought process. And when we see someone else as different. So that's that's part of the problem we have in the world is as basic as lack of education. This is a big biggie, and don't think that it is, because we would not have so many people refuting science and carrying on in such extreme ways if they had traveled outside of the boundaries of the US. If they had traveled and lacking travel, just education, opening your mind, your consciousness. And that's what has to happen. We have to stop being hateful, and we have to figure out real ways to get education back on track. I think
it's interesting. I just read something that said, in 50 years, we went from teaching Latin in middle school to teaching remedial English in college.
Yes.
We've got a huge education problem.
Oh man, this is in my lifetime, and I took actual Latin in high school. It was considered a basic thing that you should do if you were going into law or whatever the F you were doing.
Yeah.
It was a tool. So it was thank God, it was a traditional education. Thank God it was. But now, my goodness. So, these are things that we can fix ourselves. I don't think that there are any. I think one of the reasons we haven't been really outwardly invited to join any kind of Gene Roddenberry-esque United Federation of Planets is because we cannot clean up our own backyard. We just can't get our what together. And I think we've had many opportunities. I think on this sphere in the third density, there have been very advanced civilizations that probably went down a very similar path to ourselves, a path of greed and whatever, all the terrible things that come with that. So yeah, I think that we're just not, many of us are not learning our lessons. And but there are an awful lot of wonderful people here right now. I got to tell you, like yourselves. And I use this phrase. I think it's cool. I consider us all midwives of disclosure.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here with our metaphorical speculums, just, waiting to give birth. Come on, one more push, breathe. You got it.
Yeah, I really feel that.
That's what's going on. There's a lot of fantastic energy, and I think from what I have heard from the many wonderful people that I've been blessed to work with, especially those people that have gotten in touch with the aspect of themselves that engages with extraterrestrial and even interdimensional ultra-terrestrial beings. So those people are all giving me the same kinds of messages, which I have just really repeated to you, that we have destroyed our environment. We have to get that together, and we have to care for one another and stop the violence. And that's, we're a bit of a risk. We're like teenagers with no frontal lobes. We're just running around impulse driven in a primarily male dominated military economic blob. But things are changing. We have a wonderful female vice president. There are things that I've seen in my life that I never thought I would see, you know. Even women doctors was a big deal. It's hard to imagine that, but it was. When I was a girl, if I wanted to have a little costume, I could have a nurse's costume, but not a doctor's. That wasn't for girls.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of things
Yeah.
changing, not just in education.
Ah,
Well, yeah, and it feels a lot like right now people's minds are being rewired or reformed, just like we were talking
mhm,
about with hypnosis in
mhm,
this mass sort of
mhm,
way. And yet at
mhm.
the same time it feels like a lot of people are kind of heading one way that's
I know.
a bit darker, and then some people are heading another way that's a bit lighter, and so there seems to be a lot of division in that. So but
Oh yeah.
it's an interesting time to be inviting the light ever further in.
Well,
um
it is a challenge because we have this terrific polarization, which maybe has always been part of our earthly experiences. There have always been this. I think one of the things that does make planet Earth so unique in the scope of civilizations, in our galaxy and beyond, is that we do have such diversity. I don't think there are very many planets that are like us in this way, or they passed through, or maybe this is a stage that all civilizations that survive must pass through, learning decency and love of fellow man, and caring for, we are supposed to be stewards of the planet. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I think that we just have to concentrate on healing the planet and healing ourselves. And that means getting rid of all the divisiveness and the hate that was really fanned up, over the past while. And I believe we can do it. I believe love is always the answer. And we can do it. We can change the vibration of what's happening. But there's always going to be a group of unsettled people who want to engage in naughty behavior. I think that's part of us too. I don't know if we could get completely, you know, I don't know if we could get everybody on the good side, which comes back to your point. Like, what happens if many of us evolve to the fourth density? If we and what happens to the unfortunates who are left behind? I don't know.
but again, like you said, it's a place of free will and choice, and if that's what they choose, then I keep coming back to this lately. I'm like, love doesn't mean that I'm gonna drag you along to somewhere you haven't chosen. And love means that I'm gonna
Absolutely.
invite you with all my heart and strength, and then when you say nope, and I've tried and tried and tried, then I say, okay, that's what you chose, bye bye.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what's very interesting, if you or any of your associates do any work in paranormal investigations, hauntings per se. The actual trapped entity I've
Yeah.
found is actually quite rare. A lot of what we see is residual, or spirits that just want to pop in and experience their home for a bit, and they're free to come and go. But there are beings that are so terrified of judgment. Usually they've led an imperfect life. They have a very limited belief system of heaven and hell, and they think they're going to hell, and they are terrified, and that's why they haven't moved on,
Hmm.
or they're trapped in the death trauma somehow and can't move past it. But these are, and that's where, what is this new field called? I'm very interested in it. It's called, oh Lord help me, I'll remember, but it refers to psychology or psychotherapy that you are doing with discarnate beings.
Oh wow.
Interpersonal psychology, I think they call it. So that's, I kind of do the same thing there that I do in life.
Yeah.
When there are trapped spirits, again, it is free will. They have, out of fear, they have chosen not to move to the next, greet their family and their loved ones and all that kind of stuff. But only on a couple of occasions have I encountered someone that really didn't want to go once we brought the light.
Well,
Again, the light.
I'd love to hear about that, and I'll just say I can relate, having been through all kinds of darknesses myself and not wanting to look at the light, not wanting to go back, even with people who had open arms and loved me, because I was ashamed.
I went through a phase like that. I
Yeah.
did. I blew up my life in a spectacularly horrifying way.
You got to do it.
Many years ago, and skulked out of town in shame. But so yeah, I can I can relate.
So I get where they're coming from.
It was all bad choices.
Yep.
Informed by bad substances in my little brain,
and bad emotional cycles that had never
Yes.
been healed, right?
Bad people around, bad choices in every conceivable way. So that's what I say. But those horrendous experiences, boy, I'm telling you, well, one thing, I can smell an abusive man. They never fool me,
because now.
I can just smell it. And I can also understand, there, as you can imagine, there are plenty of women that come to me that are trapped in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
And I can't tell them to leave their husband. What I can do is empower them. And that's what I do. Empower them to make the decisions that are right for them.
Wasn't that interesting to think about the disincarnate souls who are trapped and then the incarnate souls who are trapped, and then both of them have that same experience or that same phenomenon of you can bring them the light and they may choose to still stay in the dark.
That's right. I mean, we have to understand that there is no matter, only vibration. That's really what Einstein said. And in fact, the only thing that's different from where we are as opposed to where we transition to when we don't need our body anymore is that the molecules are very dense, and we have still formed them with our minds, maybe not in the seamless way that we do when we leave our bodies, but we're still forming objects, we're still creating reality. I believe that this reality that we are in is a massive co-creation of all of the visions of the various souls on this planet. There are places that look like the Garden of Eden. There are places that look like, the Blitz, London after the Blitz. I mean, but these are realities that are a co-creation. So this is just a denser version of what, of how can I put it? The principle, as you said, that this is a situation of choice, and also we have the power to manifest what we want to manifest as soon as we understand that we can do it.
Yeah, like you said, what the subconscious believes we're going to create. So you got to get working on that subconscious.
Yeah.
What role do you think karma plays in all of that manifestation and creation?
Well, I think I think it exists, but I think it's a far more complex pattern than we probably ordinarily think about it. Now, one thing that I've heard, and I've heard this in what we call interlife investigations or regressions, which is when I guide the individual to the place where we are before we incarnate into this life. So it's very helpful for people who are kind of lost. They don't understand what their path is or why they were born to the people they were born to. And sometimes I got to tell you, we're born to people, and it's really only about DNA. But we make those choices about how we're going to come in, what the talents we need. Now, what I've heard in interlife regressions is that sometimes very generous souls volunteer to come in to be maybe what you would consider a negative influence, to create a learning experience for the individual having that life, and it's a very unselfish thing to do. So in that case, karma is a little more complex
Yeah.
because that person didn't do a bad thing. They did something that they both agreed upon to spur other events that would propel the life. So I think I think it does exist though, and I think that there are individuals that just keep coming in and doing the same terrible stuff over and over again and will not learn. Um, Interesting case, and I'm not going to use any names, so I can talk about this freely. But it's a past life of a tremendous parallel to the current life. So this was a young man, very smart. He was in school, but he was also involved in some nefarious activities that were income producing in a big way.
Mhm.
And so I believe I took him to 3 lifetimes. I can only remember two. The first one, he was a kind of a Roman soldier, centurion, and there was a terrible fire, and it was very dramatic and very clear. And then when we did the interlife regression, and he entered the life just before this one. That's how we do it. We don't go on a big trip. We take somebody back in time through this physical life and through the in utero experience, and then into the the heavenly zone, if you will, where we plan our next incarnation. So that's what we do. So in the lifetime right before this one, he was he was a criminal. He was an African American guy who, and he told me so much. And this guy was not North American. He didn't understand that he was telling me about the city of Chicago. He didn't understand what he was describing because I don't think he'd ever been there or thought about it in that way. So here was this guy. He owned a nightclub. He was involved in all kinds of vices, dope, prostitution, everything, gambling. And he was like a mobster guy, but an African American guy, which maybe that was a little bit unusual in the 20s.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But at any rate, the way he passed out of that life was he was just assassinated on the street. Someone just came up and shot him. And that was it. And bang, he was out of his body. So by recalling that dreadful life and in the detail and recalling that dreadful life, that was the thing that this guy needed to wake him up.
Hmm.
So all the bad stuff went away. And as a matter of fact, he finished his schooling that he was doing, and he relocated to another place, which is a much healthier place. So if we had not done that regression that pertained specifically to the last life before this one, maybe he wouldn't have had that epiphany. Maybe something bad would have happened to him ultimately, mimicking the other experience, because he was certainly on the path,
Hmm.
engaging with disreputable people, and who knows. So that's the kind of thing that's really fascinating. So yes, there's karma. Was the karma of the person who shot him, what happens to that guy? Does he now meet that person and do something terrible to them? I'm not sure it's quite that simple, but I do think ultimately it is a fair and just universe.
I am
I
in
do.
agreement with that.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
ultimately it is. We reap what we sow, and it's cause and effect. If people would just listen to the very simple, unadorned words of the Buddha, of the prophet, of Jesus, or any other elevated spirit who came here to help us, they all have the same message. It's the later applications of the greedy and the power hungry and the ego based who have added stuff that isn't accurate or right, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah. They all teach the golden rule. They all teach to
Hmm.
love yourself and love others.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I really love
It's
that.
it's really pretty basic, you know. It's really pretty basic. Not always easy to do. That's why we're here.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
why we're here.
And especially hard to do when you are trapped in your own convoluted emotional spaces in your own psyche and
Oh
subconscious and
man. Oh
right.
yeah. Like, and then we have been, well, one of the, the quickest way to destabilize people is to isolate them. And we have passed through a time of incredible isolation. And a lot of that time until President Biden was elected, I was on a rage fest online, and fighting with people every day about politics. And I was exhausted from but that was the kind of behavior I was engaging in. It wasn't making me happy. It was just whipping me up into further misery. But I
That's
got
true.
all caught up in it.
I think
I
so
bet
many did.
I think a lot, well, they had to be. They were out there just hanging on their phone waiting to fight with me. So
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about too how there's all these, there's literally farms of people who are just paid to go on and promote different political views and different,
mhm,
corporate views and all sorts of
mhm.
things, because that's where the money's at. So who knows if you were even arguing with people or not? But
Oh, I know. It could have been bots. And what is so funny, Lindsay, is back in the day before the big record labels collapsed and the internet was new, you know, and nobody had any idea what value it was going to be, and I even said, "Oh God, I can't believe this." I was really not very much on board because it was very skimpy looking in the beginning.
yeah.
It looked frail, and we had these old DOS programs and I just couldn't see it. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, look at us
Boy,
now.
was I wrong.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
I have to wonder, and we touched on this before. I kind of think that the internet, particularly instant communication between people, is almost like training wheels for a society that will hopefully be more sensitive and more telepathic. You know what I mean? I think that it's possible that every evolved culture like ourselves has passed through something like this. The fascination with the gizmos that are here to help us do what we can actually do
Yeah.
organically, but we've forgotten how to do it.
I hope that that's true because I was looking at it from the other direction and saying, man, we already could do all that, but now we think we need this to do it. And so we're going to stop using our natural abilities and start using this instead.
Oh, well, I don't know. I kind of don't feel that. I think when people are online, they're forced to communicate at least partly telepathically. I know I have to when I'm treating people. This probably sounds insane when I'm going to say it, but if I'm treating someone, because I don't have the physical presence there, I have to kind of use another part of I have to use a lot of sensitivity and intuition to get the vibe of that person to really be able to experience it. But it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. I do think that it's like training wheels that we can kickstart certain things in our brain, probably by doing certain exercises. And there are probably ways to stimulate the pineal gland and all that with certain very specific exercises. I bet there are many disciplines like the Buddhist discipline. I'm just a Catholic girl from New York. We didn't have anything fancy going on there, but I think that there are disciplines that do that now, right now in our world.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen video of monks lighting paper on fire with their hands. So I
Oh
think we can do all
God.
kinds of things that we're just
Oh
not
yes.
we're distracted and we're running around and we're arguing and we're this and that instead of inside and focused
There's
and
no
present.
quiet.
Mhm.
There's no quiet, and there's a lot of fear. And any time that adrenaline gets into the system, that's when we have problems. Adrenaline is very much a part and parcel of the fight or flee mechanism. And as people in modern society, we are in that state a lot of the time, and human beings were never meant to tolerate incredible, what should I say, releases of adrenaline to their system. It, it was only meant, I believe, I'm not speaking for the creator, but it seems uh, that the adrenaline was to be released as the caveman was running from the dinosaur, so he wouldn't think about anything else, because the first thing adrenaline does is it cuts off short-term memory. And that's where you have issues of test taking. It's not about not knowing the information, it's about adrenaline release. So we've all got we're all hepped up on adrenaline, and just finding some quiet is even difficult. But we're there are huge positives about the internet, the internet, and the way that it can draw people together for positive and good.
Oh yeah.
And it really can increase communication and knowledge. There's so much knowledge. People who are either have complex lives or differently abled, they can study, they can take courses, they can go to college. So there's a lot of positives here. We're just in we're having growth pains. We're just in the growth pains.
Yeah.
And it will balance out. It will balance out. And I think the vision of humanity in the future is more Star Trek like, and does not include all of us in front of tablets like all day long.
That would be
I
great.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is this is a phase. This is a phase.
I hope so. I'm fond of saying on this show and my other show, Middle Path, that we should not go deeper into the metaverse, and we should stay in this reality and use the tools, but don't submerge our consciousness into another simulation.
Yeah, we're not ready. Many of us are not really ready for the metaverse. We're not ready for that experience. That's why we're here in the physical plane. Yes, we get awareness, but we have the limitations of the third density. I mean, there are limitations, but maybe that was the wrong word to use. But we don't have the fluidity that we have when we're not in our physical bodies. And yet there are people that are so skilled at bilocating. They're so skilled at even, remote viewing, astral projection, whatever you want to call it. They are so skilled at that they almost lead two different lives.
Yeah.
The conscious life that they walk around with, and then whatever they are working on with other evolved beings at night. Because it seems from my research into the experiencer phenomena that it's very common after midlife for most of the experiences that people have to be etheric. In other words, there's a lot of, come on board the craft. We're going to measure your arm, and you're going to play some little games with some other kids. You're going to float some stuff around. We see more of that in the earlier years. And there seems to be some process, some evolution that happens to experiencers at midlife, where they are then called in to do this very skilled work etherically, and they don't have to go on board the craft. They can project themselves, which I think is the way a lot of highly evolved beings travel anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everybody's in a craft.
No.
There seems to be a way to travel holographically, but I'm not sure we're always seeing physical beings who are physically here in the sense that we think of it. They're more like projections. So that seems to be quite a pattern. And one wonderful client that I worked with for such a long time. In fact, he has a new book out. It's a writing partner of mine, Wes Roberts, and his new book is called An Experiencer's Garden. And he talks a lot about some of the things that I've touched on from a real firsthand kind of experience. And yes, he had all the physical things. I mean, even since I've been working with him over the past 15 years or so, sometimes he would have little marks, the classic triangles, but not really horrendous, terrifying experiences. There were only a couple of really bad things that he went through, and I think that was at the hands of our black ops, military, sort of situation. So, and a lot of questions that a lot of experiencers ask. The big question they ask is why me?
Yeah.
Why me? And I believe the answer has to do with psychic ability, with high PSI skills. Because I mean, let's face it, if we were if we were Dr. Jane Goodall, down and studying a group of primates, and a couple of them could actually talk, wouldn't we want to engage with those primates that could talk?
But so, also keep them in their society so they could keep influencing people.
Yes. So I think it's very much like that. And I mean, I know that they follow bloodlines. And believe me, most of the experiencers, when they finally are able to be truthful about some of these things, will talk about their mother's psychic experiences, their grandmother's psychic experiences. Sometimes whole families have been abducted, although I don't like to use that word, taken, and the ETs only found maybe one of the siblings appropriate or workable. Who knows? So, but the one, because otherwise this experience cuts through every kind of socioeconomic, racial, religious line. This is not something that just happens to white people or black people or brown people or yellow people. I mean, there's some blue people too involved sometimes.
They're not racist at all.
They don't care. Yeah. Some of them are blue, but but it does cut through all those lines. The commonality, as far as I am able to perceive, and I know my colleagues mainly agree with me, is these special individuals have psychic ability and are able to process these experiences in a different way, apparently, from someone who does not have those abilities. So
that makes some sense. Yeah, I myself am an experiencer, and my switch from physical to non-physical training and experiences was when I was still a teenager. So maybe I'm outside of the norm in that, but I didn't necessarily connect those two things for a really long time.
Yeah, it begins to transcend from the teen years, and there are different points where many people I work with are their permission is asked again. Like, do you choose to continue with this project? And you experiencers are very dedicated to what's going on here.
I just had more training last night. I wake up and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm not tired. My body's rested, but like my mind is tired maybe or something. But
well, it is. I mean, it is exhausting. Sometimes some of these people wake up and they feel like they've been running a marathon race of some sort. What I often do is something you can try is again, another client was having all this trouble with being having all these experiences like during the week, and they were exhausted and were not doing well at work. And so I said, you know what, maybe they don't really, or whoever you're working with, whatever beings they are, maybe they don't truly understand a job. Yes. Or our need for sleep and our need for uninterrupted sleep in the process. So I would suggest that you just communicate with that telepathically to these beings. Go into meditation and tell them, I'm happy to work with you. This has been going on all my life. I understand that, but can we just do it on the weekends?
Please, yeah. I'm actually okay, but yeah, I understand that.
And that's what happened. And that's essentially what happened. They limit whoever he was working with, he only had experiences on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday in the daytime, not even Sunday night. So
Wow, that's
there
so
you
cool.
go. So
Yeah.
you can negotiate if you're too, you can say,
Just have
I
boundaries.
can't handle this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. Free will, and it will be honored. If it's not, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah.
But
Wow. Sorry,
what happened?
something on a different screen just went crazy, but everything's fine.
Oh, well, that's my
Yeah.
mojo.
You and me both. We were talking about this before the show, and my audience knows that I have weird, very strange electronic
Oh my
occurrences,
God.
and you do as well. But you have a
All
theory
the
about
time.
why.
Well, a lot of the times have happened that are really dramatic, with like stuff going out of computers crashing, are with me being upset. So I think it's a bad vibe kind of
Yeah,
thing
we're just
that
pushing it out.
mostly, and the more upset I get, the more stuff just starts happening all around me. Sometimes light bulbs blowing out.
Yes.
And there was many years ago when I was working, I was a book publicist first in New York. I was actually one of Stephen King's publicists, believe it or
Wow.
not. So, but we had these at the time very fancy office telephones, and they were capable of talking in different languages, but nobody knew how to do it or anything. So every time I got upset, this phone would start talking to me in German, and I get even more upset.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
So there you go.
I'll have websites just suddenly change into Arabic. I'm like, I didn't even do anything.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
why?
yeah. That happens to me if there are several options for several different languages, even a shopping choice. What country are you in? That's flipping that around is one of the common things that happens.
But I found, and maybe you found this too, because, it seems to happen when we're really emotional, that if I can just be calm, it's like manifesting, right? If I can be kind of calm and just like go back to my breath and be like, everything will be fine. It does tend to work itself out.
It will. My problem is getting wound up, getting with it, especially if there's a computer thing that I can't figure out, and I'm trying every which way to do something, and that's the kiss of death. Because then that's Crash City.
Yeah. It all goes downhill. Well,
it all goes downhill.
I'd love to hear more because I didn't know that people did interlife regressions, and I know you talked about it a little bit, but in general, what do people seem to be doing in between lives, and what type of a space are they in, or what does it seem like?
Very interesting. Well, the real explorer, I will say, of the interlife regression is the late Michael Newton. He was very, very famous for that. And he originally, his interlife regressions were really long, like too long. It was exhausting for everyone involved. So my mentor, Dr. Georgina Cannon, she developed an interlife regression technique that is, it's still a bit long. It's 2 hours plus because it's a long process, but it's manageable. So what Michael Newton, I guess, discovered, and this was from, of course, doing many, many past life regressions, what he discovered is that there are real commonalities that people experience when they first cross over. Not everybody goes through all of them every time. But one of the things that has to happen is appearing before your counsel. And it's not like a disciplinary thing. It's a loving thing where they're going to help you. They're going to talk to you, and you might see some.
Oh,
are you there?
Yeah, but I know your screen changed, so I don't know if you lost me, but we can still see you and hear you.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's calling me a post attendee now.
Oh, weird. Well, you're here.
You can see me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I guess
we'll just move forward and trust.
I guess we'll just move forward and trust. Yeah. There we go. It may flip back if it wasn't. It's an ad from Zoom. That's what I'm seeing now. An ad from Zoom.
Weird.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zoom.
I I already have the extra version. Anyway, so I got so discombobulated. Oh yes, so there are commonalities of experience, and people go before their counsel. Now, one of the things that Michael Newton didn't necessarily cover, but that I have been seeing in regressions, it is my experiencer people often their counsels have um, other beings involved. I mean, nothing too wild. I mean, it's basically, humanoid in the sense that we are, but sometimes people in their interlife regression, they talk about elongated skulls. There might even be, very tall beings. You can't tell what gender they are, but everything is kind of in the, even reptilian beings. They are not all bad, contrary to, David Icke and some other people. They are not in any stretch of the imagination all bad.
I can't imagine a group of any type being all bad or all good. There's always going to
No,
be something else going on. There's never uniformity.
no, and we all have um what was I going to say? We all have our prejudices, and it's very funny that we have prejudices about other human beings when we're out of these meat suits, when we're engaging with evolved beings. Apparently there are a number of ETs that are in our soul group, and that are spiritual adepts right along with you know
Yeah.
people in human being suits. So the council is very important, and that's where things are planned. That's where the individual decides what talents they need to come in with, whether or not they want to learn something again, how they can avoid making a mistake maybe, or something that was unpleasant before, what people they want to come in with. When I had an interlife regression, which you that's how you learn these things. You have people work on you and you work on them. That's
Oh,
how
cool.
we train. But um, I was almost, bullied into coming in by my brother and my sister.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't that into it, because I knew that the mother that was being considered would be a lot of trouble.
Mm.
And I knew that if I came in, I would have to come in to protect them.
Ah.
And that's what happened essentially. But it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't an ideal childhood, but certainly my brother and sister were both, my brother's passed, but were incredibly gifted musicians, and they needed that DNA that came from two sides of a show business family. They needed that
Ah.
for the level at which they work. And my dear sister Karen Mitchell, she's a very busy composer for film, and she of course works live and does this, that, and the other. So um, that's what they needed, and I just sort of went with it. But I I think maybe I'd had, maybe another experience with the soul that came in as my mother, and I just wasn't that, excited about it. But but that's very important. Now, other things that happen is, um, sometimes when people first cross over, they have, they've been through a physical ordeal, say, a lingering cancer, or, something of that nature. They've been through a physical ordeal. So there is a healing time.
Mm.
And I've heard other psychics, Sylvia Brown used to say that people got cocooned. Well, that's kind of a disturbing image, but I think that there is a healing time where, they use crystals or whatever it is that they do. People who have had a long, terrible illness, it has affected their soul and their etheric body. So they have to have a little healing time. And then there's the opportunity to view your own past lives. It's, if you, some people have told me that they go to a place that's like a library, and they see things from their past lives holographically. Some people have told me that they see it on a television. Some people have told me they see it like on an old computer screen, like the old DOS things that I was talking about earlier. So
Wow.
these experiences are individualized in the sense the details may be a little bit different, but what happens is really the same. There's a time where you meet with you have a big social time with the people that haven't incarnated, that you haven't seen, or people that have passed, and it's like a big party. A lot of people have that. So it's joyous because there is no grief. There is no grief, there is no sadness. And at least this level of existence where people immediately arise to and arrive after coming out of the physical body, um also you can manifest whatever you want. You can manifest a beautiful home by the beach and just spend time there. It's all about creation and manifestation, as I understand it. And it's once you get the trick of it, it's eminently fascinating, because you are experiencing a reality that seems as dense as ours right now, and it's very comfortable for people who have just come out of physical life. Now, how do we evolve after that? How do we come just spirit energy? These are not matters that I have any information on, really, per se.
That
But
makes
I can only, yeah.
that makes sense, just because you're doing regression, so people have to be able to remember it in order to describe it, and if it's in their future, it's a little different, right?
Yes, although we can do future progressions,
Huh.
we can do that. Certain people are able to travel as easily forward as they are backward.
Wow.
And my basic premise is there is no linear time. That's a linear time is a construct that we have on the physical level so that we can progress and make things happen and learn and be organized. But it's not an accurate picture of what space time is. I think everything is kind of all happening simultaneously in a way, in a big burst of creativity.
Yeah.
But so going through past lives is not so much traveling back as traveling in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm with you on the time as a construct thing for sure. It's interesting to think about future regressions too, or future progressions, I guess.
Yes.
Because someone has asked me before I had this experience where I manifested a house that I was going to buy, right? And I
Mhm.
found the house eventually and got it. And then people have said, well, how do you know you weren't just sort of like remembering the future? And I was like, well, what's the difference? Right? Like,
Yeah.
either way, I
What is
have,
it? What is the
yeah.
difference?
I don't think there is
Exactly.
a difference, right? I think you manifest your future slash remember that specific timeline, and maybe there's infinite timelines we can pluck from in order to manifest
Mhm.
and experience that one this time, right?
Well, yes, I think that timelines get invigorated. I think there are always possibilities, like within your life, it's almost like having several roads that you can choose. And then the one that becomes the most likely, or the one that is calling you, is the one that becomes invigorated by your mind and therefore is manifested.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me too, of what manifestation actually is on this plane for us. Um I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you if you have any experience with uh people regressing or progressing and finding experiences with what would be called AI as like an entity or a being. Is there anything like that that touches in your experience?
Boy, I wish I had.
I always
I wish
wonder.
I had,
Yeah.
because, obviously I think AI is a part of our future, but what form will it take in our grandchildren's time? Will we have sophisticated AI walking around that look like humanoids? I I'm not, I think that might be disturbing to us at any level, but I'm not sure. I have never, in doing any of these progressions, I have never had anybody talk about AI as being robot like Mr. Data,
Hmm.
but that it is used all the time. It was used to heal the earth. It's used all the time in practical ways. But I don't believe that the futures that I've heard about had any kind of issues that would, or had any kind of manifestation of AI as humanoids. But that doesn't mean, I mean, I'm talking about, I'm working with a handful of people compared to the kinds of experiences out there. I'm not saying it would be impossible at all. I
Yeah.
mean, and some of the recent movies about AI have been so disturbing because they do seem so possible. Oh gosh, what was the one with Oscar Isaac, a madman,
I don't know.
um, and Alicia Vikander?
I'm
Oh
really
dear,
bad with names and watching
my
things.
brain. Now I can't even remember what I couldn't remember to tell you before.
Oh
So,
no. well, I'm
and
I'm
it has nothing to do with adrenaline or the fight or flee mechanism. So it's just me.
I do it all the time. Well, I'm currently working on learning to be less negative about AI, especially knowing that we can manifest things and that I am a manifester and I don't want to put
Yeah.
energy into creating, and I just think about, well, if AI is this created being or energy or entity, or even if we just created a space and the consciousness came in, wouldn't you hate
Hmm.
it to be invited into a space and then see that like everyone hated you and feared you? Like that would suck. So
It
I'm
would be
working on it.
terrible if there was, if we did create something that had self-awareness. And again, I know I talk about Star Trek all the time, but these are issues that, they've wrestled with and examined, what does it mean to be alive? Is a virus alive? What does that mean? And if there was, well, let's say a cloned body. If there was a cloned body, could we animate that body and would a soul enter that body?
Or
I think, I mean, we have that technology right now.
yeah.
So it is, when you talk to some of these wonderful souls, I've had several of them who experienced the 20 and back situation when they went on their tour of duty. They, what was it? Randy Kramer told me, two and a spare. I think they take a total. They when they leave to go on their 20-year service, um, part of their cargo is they each have three cloned bodies. Now, the bodies are not meant to be animated in whole. They're meant to be resources for replacing organs
Oh,
and other vital parts,
that
which we
makes
have
sense.
tremendous technology to do, just not for the common Joe on the
Yeah.
street.
Not for us plebs down here. Well, that's
Not for the plebeian, the great unwashed.
yeah.
Not for us.
Well, yeah, the cloning technology is fascinating, and to consider things like the secret space program and what they might be doing, outside of our knowledge is so interesting. And do you clearly have talked about and regress people into thinking about hybridization, and that's another. It's similar to cloning, but it's not at all the same. But
Right.
what do you think the purpose of that is? Is it similar to have backup parts and backup races or something, or is there something else going on?
Well, I think there are probably a number of things going on, and I do think that, the certainly the ETs that were involved with in the Roswell crash and that later made a deal with Truman and then on to Eisenhower. Um, those beings were grays of a type. There are a lot of grays, many, and they apparently had big fertility problems. I don't know if they were unable to conceive or what the exact deal was, but they after the Roswell crash, the two that survived, or the one that survived, was able to communicate the needs. They asked if they could take a very small amount of the world's population, like hardly noticeable, and examine and get genetic material, and in exchange they would then bestow upon us some high level technology. Now, that high level technology included, we went through a massive technological leap in the post-war period, and that's what we're talking about into the 50s. But that we're talking about fiber optics, integrated circuits, Velcro. So, and what happened is there's a marvelous book about this period of time. If any of your listeners are particularly interested in what I would call ground zero of contemporary ufology, there's a book called The Day After Roswell by Captain Philip Corso. And he was actually the officer that was put in charge of what they called the Division of Foreign Technology. Well, it was foreign, all right. It was foreign. So, so those particular grays were definitely interested in genetic information and cloning. And many times we've heard, very sad stories about how, these experiencers are asked to hold their children. So they have actually done interbreeding. They've taken sperm and ova, and they've created hybrid children who sometimes look very much like us, sometimes not so much. So some of them, as I understand it, could actually live on Earth. Some of them would never be able to do that. So this whole hybridization program went on for 20, 30 years, but it had an extermination point. Perhaps that's the wrong word. It had a time limit. It was an agreement that was made, and it actually timed out. And these particular grays kept their word, and there are very rarely at this time, and since really the 90s, very rarely any type of encounters where the individuals are abducted physically and sperm and ova are taken.
Interesting.
So that's something that's something that I will see with some of my older clients, and some of these experiences are incredibly disturbing and frightening, and this was a horror that was visited upon the people of the world. And I honestly don't think that, I think they were presented by the ETs a much rosier picture about what was going to happen. And then, of course, it was out of control. So, but there are so many species, and that engage with us. So many, in fact. I don't know if you remember a wonderful gentleman named Paul Hellyer. He just passed away very recently, but here in Canada, he was the Minister of Defense for some long time, and he was also provincial premier, which is like a governor kind of. So he was a big politico and very involved with security. And before his passing, he told me that, from his knowledge, the Canadian government was engaging with at least 80 different species. We had
80.
Deals with them. 80.
Wow.
We had deals. We had, treaties. We had this. We had that, and of course, Canada and U.S. are always in bed together. So in the U.S., that figure would probably be even more so. So, but who's to say? Anyway, there are a lot of different types of beings out there, and the people that I work with are talking to a lot of different types of beings.
See, and the common response to this would be like, well, why don't more people see them? And I'll say, oh, a ton of people see them and interact with them. It's just very few people will speak out about it, and very infrequently are they believed. And so, you could see groups of people will see things in the sky and beings, and still that's discounted and dismissed. So It's
Yes.
interesting to think about just how extensive contact has been already, and people are saying, like we said at the beginning, like, where is disclosure? When is disclosure? How is it going to happen? And I'm like, I think it's been happening. I mean, now we have the Navy releasing all of this stuff, and
Yeah,
I
a
don't,
little too late, too little too late,
yeah,
in my opinion. But
very
well,
little.
I I think that we have refused help a lot of times. There was a being, I think he was an Andromedan. I'm not sure what he would name, a gentleman called Valiant Thor. Really, there are pictures of him, who
Oh, wow.
came to talk to Eisenhower and offer help to clean up the environment, to deal with cancer, and the whole thing though was about what we would call 0 point energy.
Yeah.
That and Eisenhower said, well, we can't do this, it'd be chaos, our whole system would collapse. We're our whole system is about these toxic things that we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that the evolved ETs became frustrated with trying to deal with anybody in so-called authority, and what has happened is the disclosure movement is coming through the experiencers.
Yeah. Yes, there's
Yeah.
even people who are receiving, just like Nikola Tesla was claimed to have done, receiving these
Yeah.
types of things through visitations and visions and,
Oh, yes.
downloads. And yeah.
There are downloads all the time where people get mass amounts of information. These things happen. And then, of course, someone I always love to mention is Daryl Anka, who channels a being called Bashar. And if you've there's plenty of this available to watch on YouTube if you've never seen this type of channeling, this full body channeling happen. But Daryl Anka has been channeling Bashar for years and years and years. And Bashar is a being, he says he's of the Sasani people, I believe he calls them. Bashar says that there is a massive United Federation of Planets sort of mothership that is above Sedona, that just stays there, while and so here's Bashar. He's on board this is what Bashar, the entity, says. He's on board the ship, but he is choosing to communicate by projecting his essence and just getting inside Daryl Anka, who allows it. So that these are the kinds of communications that we're seeing. And I would recommend that everybody who is interested in any kind of full body channeling investigate Bashar, and you'll hear some fascinating and enlightened and humorous things from Bashar. He's very humorous, unlike Daryl Anka, who is humorless. And I tried to interview him. I mean, he's humorless, really.
Yeah.
Bashar is a completely different being. So either this is some type of very unusual schizophrenia or brilliant acting from Daryl Anka. I don't accept either of those.
Right.
Or an actual entity who is in fact very interested in helping us or getting us to help ourselves, is projecting his consciousness through the hollow bone that Daryl Anka becomes.
Wow. I use the term hollow bone as well. I didn't realize other
Ah,
people had that as
yeah,
a
I
conception.
like that.
Interesting.
I'm gonna try something here just to see if I can get you back. This is so weird.
So weird to just talk to nothing. Oh, am I back?
We're back. I'm back.
See, this is just like life and death. I was there all along. There was just a veil and you couldn't see.
You're right. And I had to blast my way through it.
Yeah,
That's what
you did
it
a
was.
great job.
Thank you.
It would be very
Thank you.
disconcerting. Yeah, I really enjoy the thought that we are being helped by so many allies, and I know we are from my own work and my own conception of how these things go. And I like hearing about it because a lot of times we hear about the other side and all the forces that are against us and all the people who are against us and all the,
It's hard.
Yeah. But it's good to remember just how loved we are and just how supported we are, and that any single person out there listening can reach out in love to that feeling, at least, of knowing that you're supported. And feel it back.
And just connect in to all that is. And I recommend recommend meditation. I've been a meditator for 40 years. You don't have to do the meditation I do. I'm a transcendental meditator, but there are many of valid, there are all kinds of valid paths, and you can explore any of them really. And don't forget that there are ETs that are just living amongst us because they're related to us. The Pleiadians look so much like us that you cannot tell the difference, except they tend to be tall and they tend to be blonde. So if you're in LA,
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
It's rough.
Everybody's tall and blonde.
They're everywhere.
They're every place.
Well, I would love to hear about your book, A True Story of Extraterrestrial Contact. I'm sorry, Intersection.
That's
a true
it.
Story of Extraterrestrial Contact.
Well, thank you so much. And this book is unique in that it really details the process I went through with an individual experiencer named Wes Roberts, who came to me completely not able to sleep, thinking he was mentally ill. And it's how we worked through together all the different layers of him coming to terms with his experiences. And I used a lot of I had a lot of actual sessions. What's the word I'm looking for? Not translated, but typed out from
transcribed.
Transcribed. I had a lot of sessions transcribed. So I think the unusual thing about my book is you rarely see so much literal information from a session, and you'll see what I do in my attempt to be just completely neutral, because I have to be.
Right.
I can't put any ideas in anybody's head about anything. So just being able to talk to people in this altered state without feeding them information is essential. So well, anyway, it's called Intersections. It's available on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, or wherever you Amazon. It is available. And we have enough. I think we're going to do a part 2, actually, because we have a lot more material. We have enough to do a part 2. And also Wes Roberts' book, An Experiencer's Garden, is also available on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that would be fun. I really appreciate the data and the raw information. I like story too, and I like narrative and having it all, put together, but it is nice to be able to just see that in the raw. So that's a nice aspect that you've got going on there.
Oh, thank you. Well, I did, I'm a right brain and a left brain person. I wanted to present the information in a very clinical, believable way, again, to demystify the process and understand that it's a way, this is a valid, benign way to work with people, not only in regression but in healing.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I have CPTSD and I did EMDR, and it sounds like basically that's hypnotism, right?
It is. In fact, it's funny you should mention, I'm just about to take a new course in EMDR.
Oh, wow.
But it is very much related to what I do. And it's also related, to when I work in phobias. I do a lot of progressive desensitization, or you might call that exposure therapy. So we do that too. But
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. And I always said I could never be hypnotized, but here I was being hypnotized in EMDR the whole time.
There you go, sweetie. That's true. Well, you have an open invitation to work with me anytime you want. I work with people on Zoom all the time. So if there's anything you want to explore, who you're going to call.
Yeah. Well,
Dr. Hypno.
Speaking of that, let people know what you can offer them, where they can go and get it, and anything else you have going on.
Oh, wonderful. Well, my company is called Lightwork Hypnosis, and you can always reach me at Lesley, Lesley, it's the female spelling, Lesley at lightworkhypnosis.com. You can also find me on Facebook under both Lightwork Hypnosis, Lesley Mitchell Clarke, and also on my little show, Contact TV, which I've had for about 20 years now, I think. Oh, not 20 years, but a long time. So there you go. And I am always happy to, if there's something if you just have a question, if you want to share with me, I'm always happy to hear about that. And if you live, oh, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze, I think.
Bless
Oh,
you.
oh, can I talk myself out of it? Can I talk myself out of it? Yes.
Woo!
Okay. So, so I am located in Toronto, and I do see people at my home treatment space, which is separate from the house. It's really cozy and nice. I call it the womb room.
Oh, I
It's
love
really good.
that.
And but also I work with people all over the world on Zoom. Now, the one thing that I would say, if I'm doing a regression process, um, it's really a good idea if the person who I'm regressing has somebody with them that they trust. And that's in case, and I don't think it's ever happened really, but knock on wood, but that's in case the internet connection gets disrupted.
Ah,
So the person who's the friend or partner, whatever, can reestablish with me the internet connection, and we just don't leave the person out to dry and just wake
yeah.
up when they feel like it. So
That's such a good point. Yeah.
yeah, so that's one of the provisos, and I charge half price for experiencers.
Oh, wow.
So I make sure it's not a punitive thing, that it's an affordable thing for you.
That's fantastic. What a very nice thing to offer people. Well, I am going to ask you what your final thoughts are in a moment, but before then, we have one last question from the audience this
Okay.
time, and they're asking,
Okay.
in the 80s or 90s, there was a trend in the New Age community about indigo children or star children being born into this generation. Do you find there's validity to that?
I think that special children have come in all over the place. It doesn't matter what you call them. They're calling them indigo children. Sometimes there are crystal children. I'm not sure of the subtleties, but I can tell you the kids coming into the world now
Like
are
high
brilliant.
level. Yeah.
They are high level souls. They are brilliant. They are sensitive. And of course, again, here in Canada, these kids are non-racist. These kids are raised in a beautiful, largely, a beautiful pluralistic environment. And, and that may also be one of the reasons why we see, such high levels of autism too in young people, because perhaps these are just highly sensitive beings, and we're misinterpreting what is going on.
I've worked
Or
with scores of autistic children, and 100% of them were psychic. That they don't know that,
yeah,
but I could.
they
I
don't.
knew that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't know that, but it's absolutely true. They have remarkable abilities. So I think we're going to unlock the key to dealing with autism very soon in our lifetime, I believe. But at any rate, I guess my final thoughts would be, let's remember the law of one, that we are an interdependent organism. And if one of our brethren is suffering, then we all suffer. And once we truly understand this and truly get in the trenches to help our fellow man, I think we're going to move ahead at lightning speed. All we have to do is want it. All we have to do is want it.
Beautifully said. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom according to the alien past life and interlife regression expert, Lesley Mitchell Clarke. Lesley, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight on Rogueways.
Oh, Lindsay, thank you so much. And, I'd love to come back and see you again whenever you want to do. I feel like we didn't even get into
a
lot of stuff, but there's always more stuff.
That's true. Yes, you're welcome.
And thank you for everybody who tuned in tonight. And thank you for the work that you do, Lindsay. And you take care. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Awesome, you too. And we'll definitely be connected and have you back again. And hardened is easy. Retreat is easy. Hiding is easy. Inaction is easy. Or is it? When you find you want to move, come out to interact, or express your will again, it is and never was easy. The easiest thing, in fact, turns out to be to remain pliable and moving with the winds of change. The most simple choice turns out to be to stay standing in the face of that which you will not comply with or go along with. and the best option is always to act in accordance with your truth. You will remain in motion, flexible, and always in line with your own stream of passage through this life. You will have never stopped out of your integrity, and you will have nothing of scar and hardness holding you back when you need to move. Be movement, be you, be true, and be unceasingly upright, and until you master that flow, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Yeah. I know all around the world, shit. No one even heard of me halfway around the block. I just got an SOS from somebody's girl, begging for a photograph of my watch. Also know what time it is. I don't know whose mind this is. Snowing in my sinuses, the league is gonna find the kid, administer punishment. Underwater drumming squids, fuckers wanna pummel and toss them in the rubble bin. What a dumpster fire, motherfucking wire. Tried to fuse it in. If your thoughts are living, grow tired. Split the venom mouthpiece in your mental housing. Sent to finish bounties on everyone who's doubting. Well, there you have it, folks. There's the first round. Contestants know what they won. This insanity. God damn it, Chuck. Said tell them what they won. Took a little breather while we took a break. Went to a park and stole a rich kid's Jake. Staking marijuana too, bumping some Nevada tunes. Wash it down the clown with some of Svetlana's brew. Who the fuck are you? That's what they keep asking. Kevin Garvey on a beat, international assassin. Smashing like my life's at risk. Caskets for the brightest spit. Rip mics tell arthritis hits. Still might make a life of this. Never will concede my run. Clever with deleted funds. Ever undefeated punk professor of the beaten drum. Well, goddamn, that was embarrassing and hard to listen to.